good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a brand new show here today, and my name is Johnny Samp. Of course, you probably heard me on the airwaves once in a while, and you probably heard this guy that I'm joined with, Dom D'Angelo here. If you follow the FRCC, Notre Dame Academy student right now, and we got a brand new podcast featuring high schools around the area, the FRCC, and it's going to be called High School Crunch Time. So welcome on in, Dom. It's great to see you. Great to have you. You look good. And you look like you're it's first week of school, second week for you guys, right?
Yeah, second full week for us. Yeah, we started in mid-August, which seems criminal, but that's getting back into the routine, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's what you got to get back in the routine eventually. I go to work. It's not fun, but I would rather go to school. But what this podcast is going to be all about, it's going to be about learning. We're going to talk about high school sports. And we're going to hopefully get some athletes on here, coaches, and that sort of thing. Just working around the FRCC and hopefully expanding one day, try to get that whole audience of Wisconsin on here. But right now we're starting small. We're starting kind of Notre Dame orientated. FRCC, I personally went to Bayport, graduated in 2017. Then went to UW Oshkosh, so I majored in broadcasting. Radio, TV, film was a specific major. I know Dom is going to, I believe, Luther, correct?
I think that was a consideration. I think the front runner right now is actually Drake University.
Drake, excuse me. I knew it was knew it was a first name basis kind of school, and then going to go for journalism as well.
Yes.
So we're going to get into that broadcasting sphere. We do love broadcasting. We're very passionate about it. Currently, Dom is the voice for Notre Dame. He's doing all the Notre Dame games. He's a hard worker, and he gets after it every day. Dom, tell me what you're excited about for this podcast. Let's just, kind of brief through it. I know it's brand new, and we're just giving this a shot, but let's hear what you're kind of excited about.
Yeah, when you first pitched it to me, it was actually kind of in the middle of the basketball season last year. You kind of messaged me and thought about doing something like this, and I was all for it. I think initially we were going to do it just Notre Dame, but then you're like, hey, I want to do something bigger than that and really cover everything that's going on in the state. And so for me, who is obviously very Notre Dame centric, being that I do all the games, I have a pretty good grasp on what's going on. But I'll talk to you or a couple other people around the state, and they'll have different names and numbers and stories from everything going on from the Milwaukee area to up in the Fox Valley. And I'm just excited to get to broaden my knowledge a bit, I think, with everything, because that's so important as a journalist and a broadcaster, especially someone as young as myself trying to make it. You got to have a lot of knowledge and know everything that's going on. So I think just broadening that knowledge that I already have, but then also this is a cool thing for the athletes too, I think, right? Because we're going to try to get them involved, and this is something that they can listen to and they can be excited about. When they have a big game, we're going to more than likely talk about it. So I'm excited for all of them, and I'm excited that I get to do it with someone that I've known for a while, and you, pal. So appreciate you having me on this journey with you.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is going to be a first try, first opportunity. Nobody's kind of doing this, so we're going to give it a real shot here and really try to have some fun with it. So we should be posting a podcast each week, ladies and gentlemen, so you can look forward to that. Right now, again, it's just all beta phase. We're going to continue to grow, continue to work together. It's all going to be something we work towards in the future goals, all right? So let's get after it, though. Let's get after the topics today. I know we have a whole list of things to cover here. Once again, Notre Dame kind of focus. So we'll start off with that Notre Dame High School and talking about them. They did get off to a hot start here now it is, week 3 of the high school football season. So that's pretty crazy. So you guys got a win versus Kaukauna in week 1, and then you snuck another win. I believe that was against De Pere, and that was 7-3, correct?
Yeah, on the road at De Pere, 7-3 win.
And that's no easy task. I mean, De Pere brings a tough football team. I believe it was a couple of years ago they won the South Conference or North Conference. It's since split since I've been in high school, but I believe they won it all a couple of years ago. Maybe it was last year.
Yeah, it was in the last two to 3 years they won the North, I believe. Yeah.
So for a smaller private school, taking down a kind of a powerhouse, a juggernaut in some ways. In De Pere is something to be pat on the back for to all the players, the Tritons that are getting after it and getting those wins. Not an easy task, and Tritons are they moved up in the rankings here on Max Preps. I believe they have them at 6 this week, which is really good. I think that's the highest I've ever seen them. And then like it's I believe Muskego's 2, a couple other teams up there, but it's pretty stacked roster. A lot of D1 schools. I think Notre Dame now is it's still D3 for football, correct?
Still D3, currently ranked number 1 in the state for Division 3. Yeah.
Okay, yep. So yeah, right up there now, playing with the big boys and finding some wins. So crazy. So tell us a little bit, because you're obviously doing the broadcast. Tell us a little bit of how those games went. It sounds like it was kind of a ground and pound game, a couple nail biters. Any key highlights in those games that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I think the story for the season so far has been how really dominant this defense has been, and they have a number of seniors leading the way with James Flanagan, who is a dual player. He plays tight end on offense, defensive line. Defensively, he's committed to Notre Dame. Asa Poyster is, I believe, leading the team in sacks. He had a sack in the game this past week against De Pere. And one thing that's been really interesting to see is kind of the secondary, how that's evolved. They lost a number of seniors from a season ago. The big name is Charlie Hornacek, the Minnesota Duluth commit, and teams wisely have not been targeting him. I think he was maybe targeted once against De Pere, and I don't think he was targeted at all against Kakana. So it's a young secondary. They've meshed pretty well for the first couple of weeks. They've had to go up against some really tough receivers, mainly with Parker Shue over at Kakana, who's a stud in every way. So the defense has really carried them through the first 2 games of the season. Offensively, Christian Collins has been the workhorse for this team, and I was looking at the numbers earlier today. He had 38 attempts against Kakana, and I believe it was 27 or 28 in the game last week against De Pere. Not really for great averages. I think he's under 5 yards a carry right now, which is much different from what he was averaging a season ago. Everyone saw those big plays that he was able to muster up, but it's only a matter of time. I think most people know that when it comes to him. And one thing that's been, I think, for when I was first looking at this team, was how are they going to be up front with the offensive line? And you've seen the first couple of weeks, it's been a little bit of a process to kind of get fully gelled together, which is to be expected, you would think, because last year that team was so dominant in the run game and really springing those big plays for Christian Collins and for Ian Blum, who was a senior last year, had over 1,000 yards. So the defense has really carried them through these first couple of weeks to allow this offense to get going so far.
Yeah, Notre Dame's been kind of. I mean, historically, I would say Notre Dame's been kind of a run heavy team. Really good on the defensive side of things. Maybe not an air attack, real pressure. I mean, I believe they have a new coach now, since I was in high school. But yeah, they've been a solid squad. I went to a little bit bigger of a school at Bayport, and we had about 1,800 kids, and so we were D1. But we would play Notre Dame once a year back when the conference was all together. And, Notre Dame, it's always been a brand in football that they play good defense and they run the ball hard, whether it was, through the running back, through a wide receiver option, or the quarterback taking the haul. I mean, been really good. But let's take a look at this week. What do we have here? I believe we have, or Notre Dame, excuse me, has Sheboygan North this week. And, Sheboygan has had their struggles as of late, and maybe not producing the best football team. But what do you think about this matchup here coming up this Friday?
Yeah, I think it's almost due for a coming out party from this offense because to your point, Sheboygan North, I believe they're 2-0 to begin this season actually. So they've been in some high scoring games. So I think for Notre Dame, maybe not just getting something productive going offensively, but they got to get some confidence going because it feels so one-dimensional right now with that run game. To your point, and when you're not getting some of those big chunk plays like they had been the previous couple of years, that can probably weigh on you a little bit. So I think that what I would like to see is for them to open it up a little bit more and some traditional drop back passing. I know Max Pierce, who is a junior this year, a new quarterback, he is making his first couple of starts to begin this season. But I think when you have championship aspirations like they do, you can't be so one-dimensional that every single time you're on offense you have just one receiver on the field. I think you need to be willing to spread things out a little bit, especially when you have James Flanagan at tight end, because that's going to make his workload easier. That's going to make Christian Collins' workload a ton easier because they've really been taxing him for the first couple of games. And defensively, they just need to continue to be really solid. They've been opportunistic. They have not really afforded any big third down conversions through the first couple of weeks. They came up with a pick last week in the red zone actually against a peer. So I think for what I would be looking for from Notre Dame was for this offense to kind of find their stride a little bit and take some pressure off of that defense because you and I have watched enough football over the couple of years to know that when the defense feels like they have to be perfect, they start pressing, and that can be a bit of an issue. So I'm hoping to see some bigger plays, some chunk plays from this offense to really just kind of ease everybody into this week against Sheboygan North, who I believe they're tied at the top of the conference with 2-0 apiece.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with North. Just historically, they've kind of had their struggles, and as of late, I haven't heard too many news. I mean, I've been out of high school now for what, almost 10 years, so I'm getting old. But yeah, so without a doubt, I mean, I'd like to see it's always tough in high school to get that passing game going, and I understand why because receivers and the quarterback's arms maybe not there, but if they open up that passing game, that could open up a whole new book for Notre Dame, who's already 2-0, and really kind of put them to the forefront because I think your toughest opponent after probably this Sheboygan North game might be that Menasha game. I believe you guys have in October. Menasha always puts up a good fight, but they've struggled too. I believe they lost to Nina in a tough one. Just getting outscored, simply just getting beaten down. And, it'll be interesting to see. If you can open up that passing game in high school football, that makes a big difference. And it's not something to be taken lightly, especially with all the talent that's around this FRCC and, in both the North and the South Conference and just all around Wisconsin. Teams that really see a lot of championships that have a good passing game in the high school business. So it's always interesting to see how coaches implement it. If they're able to do it through receivers, and a lot of times it's through the tight end. And you talked about Flanagan, a big tight end, a pass catching tight end, which is always a good thing. It'll be interesting to see what he can do, and maybe he can help out the quarterback. And even if it's just a 5 yard dump down, just opening that up instead of putting all the pressure on the backs and really kind of opening that offense to something new and hopefully something different for your Notre Dame high school.
Yeah, he had 4 catches in the game last week. He did not surpass 40 yards, so they've been running a lot of short hitch routes to him, and he's a vertical threat. You just said it right there. So if you can get him running down the field, will really help open things up. And I think also, to your point about passing and like how important that is, I think just having a confidence that you can do it. You may not be doing it that efficiently. The first 2 games of this season, Max Pierce has only attempted 14 throws. That's 7 per game. And a couple of them have really come when they're, third and long because of penalties. They really struggled with penalties in the game against De Pere. So I think just knowing that you can do it is going to change so much because now the defense has to respect that. And, like I said, that's going to open things up for Christian Collins or for Jack Collins, who scored the go ahead touchdown last week and was the difference in the game there. So it's a timing thing with passing. Obviously, you got to make sure that you know kind of your steps and strides with your receivers, but just having that as an option to you can open up so much. And like I said, with where they're looking to go this year, with they reached level 4 last year. They came up short against a really good Rice Lake team. That was the most in that game that I've seen them pass in years. And I think it's because they kind of got down early in the ball game and they kind of had to resort to passing. So when you have that, when you start building that early in the season, now teams have to completely change their game plan because right now the first 2 weeks against two really good quality opponents, they're just stacking the box and they're not letting that run game beat them. So there are chances to be had. It's early, which is a positive for them. If this was mid to late season, I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, you should be pretty concerned about that. But they're still young. It's still a really young season. They've got some games at home coming up. So there's time to iron this stuff out and get this thing rolling.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's a positive just to go 2-0 in the beginning. You kind of have that summer slump, and then you got to get going right away. But it's a good to see. But let's talk a little bit about some other teams in the area. I know we kind of highlighted that, but there's a lot of good teams in our area, a lot of good teams in the FRCC, and we'll talk about. We'll start here by talking about Kakana and West Appear. A little bit of a recap there with them. I mean, Kakana's 1-1, and they're doing pretty well. West Appear's never a slouch. They always bring a great football team. And let me just fix that. There we go. And anyways, so they play. Kakana plays Hortonville on Thursday. So looking at some of that roster that they had, um, it looks like Bron Schaefer, 28 for 46, 371 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 21 carries, 88 yards, 1 touchdown. And then from the running back side of things, it looks like 40 carries, 189 yards, 1 touchdown for Reardon. But let's talk about, because Kakana, you guys did play in week one. You guys are familiar with them. And, I'm saying you guys meaning Notre Dame. But
Yeah.
what did you see out of Kakana?
Very skilled skill position players, without question. They run a unique style of offense where you can't just focus on one guy. I think the one guy most people probably think of is Shu, the receiver, who I believe is a senior this year, Parker Shu. He had some incredible catches in that week one game, but they're so diverse, which makes it really difficult to guard because Bron Schaefer is willing to tuck in and run. Aiden Reardon has had a number of opportunities to begin the season, and their backup, Kress, as well. They're not afraid to give him the ball either. So offensively, they're a really tough matchup for anybody because you can't just focus on one guy. Defensively, it's similar to what I was saying with Notre Dame. I think relatively young secondary. Sam Weber, their linebacker, is a stud. 18 tackles through 2 games. He had a sack already. He he looks like an all-conference player through 2 weeks, and that's really the heart and soul of that defense there, as is Will Clark. So it's kind of a tale of two stories here because in the first game against Notre Dame, they played a really good defensive game. Most times with that offense, you hold a team to 16 points, you're going to win. The issue was their offense kind of had some troubles. There was, a couple miscues down on the goal line that resulted in turnover on downs, I believe. But then you look at the West Appear game that they just played last week. Offense scores 35 points, but the defense gives up 31. And if it wasn't for kind of a crazy, I don't want to call it a fluke play, it was an incredible play at the end of that game. They give up 37, 38 points defensively. So for this week, for them, it's about putting it all together and playing one cohesive, really strong game because they are very capable of doing that. They just have to go out there and execute it.
Yeah, and that's sometimes the most difficult thing to do as a team, especially when you're first getting going in the season, is finding that kind of groove, making sure everybody knows where they're at, what their responsibility is. And it sounds like Kakon is really talented. Obviously, they're ranked right now. They have a lot of upside to that team, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do because I feel like they're going to make a reemergence through the FRCC, and actually, are they must be in the Valley Conference. But anyways, just make a reemergence, and even after a tough week one loss, I don't think that's going to really affect them too much. moving forward. I definitely see the Galloping Ghost, making a run at it and being a really, really good, solid team. But the other big game, another big game that we're looking at is West Appear. It looks like they got Green Bay Southwest. And, obviously this is going to be, another game where, Southwest has had seen their troubles. And, they haven't been a real strong program in the last couple of years. But do you see Southwest turning things around here in the near future?
It's whenever, and I don't remember who their coach is. I feel like they may have had a change in the recent past. The biggest thing is establishing a culture. And that's when you see the really good teams at the top, like Kakana, Notre Dame, Bayport. That they have this culture and this standard that you play to. You don't necessarily play. It's the old Jay Wright line. You don't play to a score. You play to a standard. So with Southwest, the beginning part for them is going to be establishing that culture and kind of finding the right kind of guys to be that culture starter. To your point, they've kind of struggled in the FRCC the last little while here, and they've got Patrick Ryson coming in who looks as good as advertised. So they definitely have their hands full there. They're 0-2 to begin the season. A couple tough games to begin. They lost to Appleton East and to Stroughton in two one possession games. So they've been in both of these games, but it's a little bit different animal when you've got the Phantoms coming in with their. I said this when I saw what happened in the game last week. I would feel terrible for whoever West De Pere plays this next week because they're going to come out firing and with a vengeance because they, in all likelihood, the message in practice has been we let one get away right there. So, um, Southwest better be ready for any and everything. They got them at home, which is a good thing, but you got to be all hands on deck for that one because that's there's no easy task stopping that offense coming in.
Yeah, and I mean, West Appear has always been kind of a top tier team, especially in that D2. Really kind of dangerous both offensively and defensively. I know a couple of players on that team, and they've talked about how they're looking forward to this season, and they're ready to kind of make a difference on the roster here this senior year. I talked to the backup quarterback and one of the defensive backs. Anyways, they talk about that West Superior really kind of has that culture that you were talking about before. Um, Something that's been embedded into them since they were younger, working through the youth programs and just making sure that they're getting everything going at the right time. And right now is time to get it going. Right in the beginning of the season, you got to get those wins. Any loss hurts, kind of like college football, where it really does kind of matter. But it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Do you have any other things you want to highlight with that West Superior and Green Bay Southwest game?
It'll be interesting to see, just looking at some of the stats here. They've obviously been leaning pretty heavy on the pass game, have the Phantoms. So Evan Ott has had a nice beginning to this season. Only 4.5 yards a carry. So maybe try to, if this game gets out of hand from the Southwest side of things, maybe look for West De Pere to try to establish that ground game a little bit. And this is going to be two straight road games for West De Pere before they get Preble next week, Thursday. So, the travel is not something that is maybe discussed as much at this level in high school, but it can certainly wear on you and at certain points. And it's according to this, what I'm looking at here, it's a 5 o'clock Central Time start. So a little bit earlier in the day, maybe have to, get out of school early or something for them. I think everybody should have started by now, I think, right? I know
Yep,
we were pretty
everybody
early.
started by now, and
Yeah.
so right now we're talking about the week following Labor Day. That Labor Day was Monday. So
Yeah.
yeah, every school in the area has got to be in class. Um,
Yeah.
I think the Howard Swamscott School District started this week. I see the buses going by. So it's good to see, but yeah, I think everybody's in class now. I know Green Bay starts like a week earlier, before the Labor Day, and you guys start like in the middle of August. So,
Yeah, yeah, I think we're the one black sheep when it comes to that. So, it'll be interesting to see their energy level, but just like we were just saying, based on what happened last week, and Coach Greison's going to have them fired up, ready to go. So, by all indications, it should result in a West Pier win more than likely, but you got to go out and play the game. That's the bottom line.
all right, perfect. And then we take a look here, moving down a little bit. We're going to look at number two, Kimberly. They got Oshkosh West this week. That one might be a rough one for Oshkosh West. Kimberly coming off a huge win versus Bayport. Um, Bayport and Kimberly kind of two big dogs in the D1 conference. You have a lot of other schools, including like down towards Milwaukee, like Muskego, and those schools. But up here towards the Bay, it's got to be Kimberly and Bayport. It's always discussed. Nina's up there too. Um, Appleton North, I haven't heard much from them lately, but I know back when I was in high school, they were a pretty big school in the football program. But Kimberly coming off a big win and really just, a tough loss for Bayport and just couldn't get anything going. The final score 31, I believe 14. And, just not a lot of scoring going on. The offense stalled out. I watched a little bit of it on, the voice of BP with Chris Learman. But I didn't really get to see the whole thing. Kimberly, once again, just continuing to pound, doing their thing. Is there any chance anybody can stop Kimberly, you think, this year?
That's if they do, I would love to see it because the way that this ground game had went through the first week, and you know, beating Bayport is no small accomplishment. You do it on their home turf. That's something else there. So I'm just looking at some of these rushing numbers here. 10 yards of carry for Doucette. You had Plow at 5.8, Ellefson at 6.6. So if anybody has the defensive line to do it, you would, in theory, think it would be Bayport because that's seemingly been their strength for, the last however long you want to say, 10, 15 years. So if they did that to that defensive line, you know, man, good luck is what I got for anybody who wants advice on this, because that's as close to a juggernaut in the run game as you're gonna see. And then defensively, too, looking at kind of what they did,
Oh yeah, they got
just
dogs
kind
on
of,
defense.
yeah, just looking at this box score. I mean, Jackson Otradovic for Bayport averaged 8 yards a carry. He had a touchdown. In the passing game, under 50% completions for Matt Stevens, only a 75 quarterback rating. So they look the part for sure. They certainly are poised. They have the senior talent to do it. And they would, I get we're in the overreactionary business here, but they would probably be my pick to be in Madison and when we get to the postseason here because they look that dominant. I didn't get to watch the whole game. I saw a few clips of it, but they look every which way you want a football program in this state at that level to look. They looked fantastic last week.
And that's the thing; they always look fantastic. It's every year. I haven't seen really a down year from them. I remember one year they were supposed to be down, and then they weren't. They were really good again. Um, but it's kind of credit to them. Tip the hat. Kimberly's not a huge town, but they also do get a lot of people coming there for football. So I do understand what is kind of happening with that program. They get a lot of interest just from people around the state, and moving their kids there, trying to get into the scholarships, following everything else. But really, I mean, this consistent football team is something like I almost imagine it like Alabama. I mean, you gotta think about it like that. And I know way different scale, but on a small scale, it's got to be like that Alabama football program under Saban. Every year, even when it sounds like they're out, they're still not out.
Yeah.
They continually bring in talent and they continually put it out on the field and they play out well together. And that's something culture wise. We talked about that earlier. It's kind of has to be taught at a young age, and then learn collectively as a whole through the whole team. But credit to them, tip their hat. They do have Oshkosh West this week. I got a feeling they're gonna kind of run right through that one, and make their way, continue to cook, and they would be 2-0 because I believe they've only played one game. Bayport was our opener. Um, and yeah, they're just a solid roster. I likely see them in Madison here in a couple months, and probably fight for a state championship.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better. That Alabama comparison I think is pretty spot on. And you know, the thing that's always so striking about them is that seemingly all the pieces fit, right? That
Every year, every
it
year.
it, it doesn't seem that there's everything is just run so perfectly there seemingly. And it's as a purist, I think for both of us, it's fun to watch. It's pretty
Awesome.
incredible to see what they do. Well, I know for you, you're a
Yeah,
Bayport guy, so
I'd like to see them get beat, but
that's
nothing.
fair. That's fair. But
I think you would
it's
too.
well, deep down, I'm trying to
Yeah, no,
stay.
it's all right. We can take a couple haters. That's
So
totally fine.
that's all right. Hey, listen, if you got haters, that means you're doing something right.
Well,
Let's put it
that's
that way.
usually what it means. Now, looking at another powerhouse here, Nina, number 12. They play Appleton East, but they beat Menasha 50-13 last week. I mean, what a pounding! I mean, you got a run clock at that point. I'm looking at what they've done this season. They've lost to Muskego, number 3, and the offense ground game is going to be through Grant Dean. He's averaging 11.9 yards, 262 yards on the season, and they've been rolling on the ground game. Nino, once again, the Rockets finding a way to get those yards, finding a way to generate offense, and they always have a strong defense. So there's nothing, in this Appleton East game. I don't see the Patriots winning this one, but there's been stranger things that have happened. Um, but what are your thoughts on Nina? Nina's cooking again. They're one of those schools, kind of like Bayport, kind of like Kimberly. They're kind of a perennial school. You're going to see them every year. You're going to see them making plays.
Yep.
And what are your thoughts on Nina?
Strong ground game, like you said. They had a number of really, really strong rushers last year, and then that's carrying over to this year with Grant Dean. Only 5 attempts, 127 yards. That's
That's some
25.
yardage.
Come on now, that's 25 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns.
Look at you doing this math.
So, well, to be fair, I have the box score right in front of me, but
Oh, come on.
yeah,
You
I'm
didn't
gonna
want to
take
take
the
credit
top.
for that? Didn't want to take
Yeah,
credit?
I will next time. First show. I'm trying to be
Yeah, you're
as honest here.
little analyst. Yeah, just trying to be honest, but
Trying to be honest, yeah. 5 rushing touchdowns on the ground. That's sign of two things. Number one, you've got some talented backs right there, but number two, that offensive line is getting a push,
yep.
and that's where games are won. People can think it's about the secondary, it's about the receivers, quarterback. The games are still won in the trenches with your offensive and defensive line. And to your point, the defense looks pretty solid to begin. I know against in week one they kind of struggled a little bit. I don't think there's any shame in losing
No,
on the
Muskego
road.
is good.
Yeah, I don't think many people are like, "How the heck could this happen?" And no, there's no shame in that. So they got Appleton East tomorrow. Actually, this is coming out. We're recording this on Wednesday the 4th. Um, they got them at home, and then they got Kakana next week on the road. So you don't ever want to be caught looking ahead per se. If everything goes in their estimation, according to plan, this should be um, a game where should be similar to last week. This is also rare. I don't think I've seen with the new kind of scheduling things. I don't think I've seen a team play back-to-back Thursdays before. That's kind of
Thursday's all
unique.
new to me. We never had a Thursday game. Everything was always Fridays. Friday night lights. Back in the ancient days.
Right. Yeah.
But
So, I know it changed a couple of years ago, but every team plays at least one Thursday game. I think this is the first team I've seen not only play 2 Thursday games, but go back to back Thursday games. So kind of a interesting nugget there. You know, they're really good, and there's not a ton of over analysis that needs to be said. As long as that offensive line stays relatively healthy, again, it's a long season. As long as they stay intact, they can keep those backs in the backfield upright. They should have a heck of a season.
Yep, run game's a big thing in high school football. Again, we mentioned it. If you can open up the passing game, you're going to be one of those top tier schools. I always say. Uh, but if you got a good run game, you're going to be right up there as well. Barreling backs. It's easier on the line too, keeping those guys moving forward rather than backwards. Um, you know, they always say, like downhill blocking. That's exactly what you're doing in that run game. You're getting out to those linebackers, you're pushing them over, and then you're trying to bully some defensive backs as you keep going down the field. That's exactly what they're trying to do. And, that's kind of their brand. But, again, another team that's really, again, we talked about culture, another team really inside that culture that has a really good program. And, Appleton East got a real big task on hand. It's always there's always a chance, but right now I got Nina probably taking that one in the get going.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Appleton East. I know they had a better season, I believe, last year than they had in a couple years, which is good for them. But it's a little different animal when you got Nina coming to town. So we'll see if they can do it. It's going to be a tall task. They're Appleton East is 2-0 right now, so they're if I'm coach this week, I'm saying, hey, there's two good teams here. So they're another one too. They played 3 Thursdays in a row actually. They played the 22nd, the 29th, and then they play on the 5th tomorrow. So interesting. I'm a nerd when it comes to schedules for pretty much everything. So that's kind of an interesting one there. So they won 6-0 last week against Kettle Moran, but the game's at Nina too, so that's gonna play to Nina's advantage for sure. So it's anything can happen, but that might be that out of all the games we've looked at, that one might be the toughest one of the week right there.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then let's move over to my former alma mater, Bayport High School. So they played Green Bay Preble this week. They lost to Kimberly as we mentioned before, 31-14. Not a good showing. Really struggled. Yeah, again, once Kimberly is just kind of a three-headed dog coming into any battle, and unfortunately, the Papermakers just continue to roll over the Pirates. It's in the football program year after year. Nothing's kind of changed. Even when I was back there, there's not a. I mean, Kimberly's just a really good school.
Yeah.
Matt Stevens 8 for 17, 141 yards, zero touchdowns, zero interceptions, and I mean, what do they do? If you lose 31-14 against probably one of the best teams in the state, how do you come back from that? What's the mentality? Is it just move on to another week, or is it think about what happened last week and try to correct those things, or are you just completely clearing that from your mind?
I think you got to clear it, especially since they have a new coach this year.
Yep.
Um, so I think his you know his message this week has to be, guys, it was one game, it was my first time coaching. I know I made some mistakes. I know we made some mistakes on the field. So I think you definitely watch the tape and you learn from it, but I think for the most part you scrap it. Um, and actually again they're wrong. They played Middleton a couple weeks ago. But, I still think you kind of need to flush this one. Every team
Yep.
in every sport has a stinker along the road. It just happens. It's just part of sports. That's what makes it entertaining. So they're at Preble on Friday. Preble so far is 0-2. They're only averaging 7 points a game so far. They've only been able to muster up one touchdown in their first two games against Oshkosh West and Appleton North. So I think for the Pirates, they need to come out and establish that line of scrimmage. I feel like that's been the theme of the episode so far.
Yep. Big dogs
They,
down in the trench.
yeah, they definitely struggled in the game against Kimberly. Um, only 157 yards as a team. The leading rusher was Matt Stevens, 13 attempts for 71 yards. So I think coming into this game, you just got to flush it and be like, you know what? Sometimes it happens. You hope it doesn't happen against a really, really good team that you have to bring your A game against in order to have, a good chance of winning. But if I'm Bayport, knowing kind of their schedule coming up, they've got Preble this week, then they've got Appleton West on the 12th, and then they're at Schwaben on the 20th. So I think they'll be fine. I think that's just one of those games that you just gotta move on from it.
Yep, shake it off like Taylor Swift.
There you go.
Yep, just
There's the
shake it.
reference. There you go.
Just shake it off. I agree with you there. Kind of move past it. Yes, there's things to learn from that game. Obviously, every game against a good team like Kimberly is going to be a learning game, win or loss. But especially your losses, because then if you're learning something from it, you're not really losing, and and any high school athlete's really not losing, or a high school team's really not losing. They're all learning. They're all growing together. They're all becoming better individuals moving forward. But it'll be exciting to see what Bayport can do this year. I know there's a lot of hope and optimism around the new head coach, and I do plan on watching a little bit of Chris Learman's broadcast on the Voice of Bayport or NEW Sports Radio. Give him a shout out. He's kind of my mentor. He's how we kind of connected. He's been a big role in my life, so I want to always give him a shout out. He does great work, and he's taught me a lot throughout these years. But is there any other sports or things you'd like to highlight? I know I got one thing that I would like to highlight, but is there any other things you'd like to highlight before we kind of wrap up the show here?
Before we go there, I want to ask you, what are your impressions of the new coach at Bayport, Coach Jorgensen? I haven't been able to watch many of the games yet, but what do you think of him so far?
So I'll be honest, I haven't been able to watch a ton of the game. It
Okay.
sounds like it's a similar kind of offense that they've been running these past number of years that's worked so well. I really hope he gets the kids working on more explosive plays. The jet sweep works, but get the passing game going. If you got the quarterback with the arm, get it going. I really have a lot of optimism for the program. I think he was a good pickup. I know it was a little off-season turbulence. We're not going to go into that. But I think he stepped right in. He got a win week one, and now he's just got to kind of figure things out. I've heard from players at Bayport that they really like him as a coach. They like his character, they like who he is, and they like everything about him. So that's always a good sign to hear, especially for a brand new coach coming into a historically good program, and with a lot of guys just kind of moving in different directions and trying to do different things. It's got to be tough, especially when you're taking over guys that are used to something totally different. And that's what I see with like college. When a new guy takes over the program, unless he's a big name like your Sabins, Dabo Sweeney. I'm blanking on a whole bunch right now. Georgia's, I forget his name.
Kirby Smart. Yep.
Yep, yep. Anyways, like if those guys take over the program, then something's happening. But if it's somebody you don't are not familiar with, it's always a little bit interesting to see how players react. And it looks like they're reacting positively. They're playing good football. They got another game this week that I think they should win against Green Bay Preble at Preble. But it'll be exciting to see what they can do this season. But
Yeah, no doubt. They've historically been a great program. My entire time watching high school football, they've always kind of been the class of the state seemingly. So I think they're in store for a good season. I really do.
without a doubt, but I do want to highlight a couple other things I did see in the WIA happening. That's always good. There are two athletes actually. I don't know if you saw this in the Paralympics that were former Wisconsin high school athletes, and they gave them a mention. I forget what they did, but being a Paralympian, that's a huge honor. And it's pretty cool to see that Wisconsin athletes are making it to that big stage, getting an opportunity to do things that most people are never going to be able to see in their life. So I want to give a big shout out to them. Do you have any? Because I'm no longer in the high school business or at high school. But do you have any sports like at your school that you'd like to give a shout out? A special congratulations.
Sure, yeah. Two teams that have done really well to begin the season have been the Notre Dame girls tennis team. They are currently ranked fourth in the state in the latest poll, I believe. They played Pulaski last night. That was their first conference match, and they won 7-0. So they're doing some really good things there. They've got a strong team this year. And then I'm a little biased. I do run cross country. I'm not anywhere, I'm not the fastest guy in the world. That's why I'm trying to, do this whole announcing
Yep,
thing.
yep, yep, yep.
Um, Shameless plug. Go subscribe to the Notre Dame cross country YouTube channel. We're doing some stuff over there. But there was a race last week in Two Rivers. That's kind of the inaugural first meet of the cross country season. Both boys and girls JV and varsity swept the race. So
Very cool.
four up, four down. Joe Hunt, who is one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen, he ran like a 16:10 or 15 or something amazing on a 5K. He won the varsity, and then Kai Volk, who had kind of been dealing with some injuries the past couple of years, but just wanted to stay with the program because he likes a lot of the people in it. Um, he won the JV race. He ran 2010. So they each got a medal. I think Joe actually got a belt because that's what you get when you win the Two Rivers race. So happy for them. They will both be running this weekend at UW Parkside in a really big meet with a ton of schools from the Midwest, so Illinois and Ohio, a couple different teams coming up. So shout out to those two programs because they're doing some really awesome stuff.
Oh, very cool to hear. So that I think that'll wrap up our first episode. It's been a great episode. I mean, I'm really happy with it. But that'll wrap up our first episode of High School Crunch Time. You can catch us each week. We're gonna be posting sometime during the week. I'm trying to get every post done on Thursday. Once again, Dom D'Angelo, Johnny Samp here, and we hope you have a great week. And we hope to see you next week tuning in. So have a great night.